Joining me now is former Chief of Staff to Senator Mike Lee, current president of the Sutherland Institute, Boyd Matheson. Boyd Matheson, Republicans have had 7 years to come up with a new plan to replace Obamacare. And I don't know if I could personally stomach another Obamacare show, if that's what they want to do when they come back from break. But then again, they do owe the American people what they promised. Millions and millions of Americans are being crushed by Obamacare. So to just say that, let it as it is collapsing and just let it collapse on its own, I think that's very, very unfair for the American people. So do you think they should take another stab at Obamacare and repealing it?
Yes, they absolutely need to take another stab at it, Stephanie. This is a classic issue of failed leadership. Mitch McConnell has failed. Even today, President Trump was going after him as Senator McConnell was complaining that the president had excessive expectations of the Senate. I think we should expect more, not less. And so I do think they should come back at it, and they should look at it not as a skinny bill, which really had nothing to do with health care, had some nice bailouts for health insurance companies, but not a lot for the American people. And they do owe it to the American people to come back. And if they're going to come back and take a real run at health care, they need to start with the forgotten men and women who were not part of the last health care bill. They also need to make sure that they're holding the moderate Republicans responsible. Think about it. It was Murkowski, Collins, and McCain who killed the last skinny bill. And while it was, as you said rightly, Stephanie, it wasn't really a repeal, but it was at least a step in the right direction. But the moderates are never held accountable. And that's part of the problem. If we can hold them responsible, get a bill that doesn't just deal with health insurance. A lot of people have access to health insurance. We want people to have access to health care. If they can do that, that's worth time, that's worth investing and going. But the clock's ticking because they got a lot to cover in September.
And the pink elephant is the $20 trillion debt. No one wants to talk about that. And that's a major issue that needs to be tackled. And they need to raise the debt ceiling. And, it is critical that we have a discussion about the national debt. A lot of people don't realize how this hurts our country.
That's right. And everyone likes to complain about the conflict in Washington. Conflict is not the problem. It's collusion. It is impossible to get $20 trillion in debt through conflict. You can ask my wife. I've tried it. If I try to convince her that I need the big screen TV and go into debt for it, she's going to keep me in check. But when we collude and I say, well, I'll get the big screen TV and you can go do some shopping and go on a trip, that's where we get into debt and problems. Same thing in Congress. It's collusion that's the problem. Big business, big government interest, a lot of lobbyists in there, and that's a problem. And if we don't have that discussion first, that is the biggest threat to our national security. It's not Korea, it's our national debt.
Yeah, the reckless spending has to stop. We've heard our president say that he wants to stop it, but we know that our Republican and Democrat lawmakers, they love to spend money. They're guilty on both sides. It's much easier to spend money when it's not your own. And when it comes to tax reform, we're hearing, great ideas from Republican leadership. We've heard from the Trump administration some of their ideas, but I'm not holding my breath. I'm not sure they're going to be able to pull this off after everything that I've seen. It's like we need new leadership. I have no confidence in Paul Ryan or Mitch McConnell.
Yeah, I think it is a time for new leadership in Washington. The American people are tired of it. They're frustrated with it. And Republicans especially should remember, Democrats should remember it as well, but Republicans in particular should remember that it's these forgotten men and women. They are the ones who elected President Trump and put him in the White House. And if they come out with a tax bill or a tax cut that only benefits the wealthy, the well-connected, and big business, they're going to have a major problem come 2018. So it's time to have a real serious conversation, an uncomfortable conversation with the country about debt, deficit spending, raising the debt ceiling, to do that without any kind of cuts or any kind of focus on how are we going to reprioritize things is not only a missed opportunity, it's really reckless and irresponsible from both parties.
Yeah, well, my understanding was that the Republicans weren't going to just do a tax cut for the rich. Their tax reform plan is to benefit the middle class. And that's like the Democrats' talking point. They say, oh, well, the Republicans only want to help the rich. And I don't think that's true.
Yeah. And if the Democrats really want to be the party of helping the poor, then they ought to be calling for every poverty program to be audited, to make sure it is effective, to make sure it's not trapping people in poverty, to make sure it's not duplicative of another program. They should have the very best. And on the other hand, Republicans, if they want to be strong on defense, they should be going through the industrial complex of the military and making sure we're getting rid of wasteful spending there. We really need to challenge, as Americans, this tipping point. We need to make sure that we're challenging both sides of the aisle to live up to the principles they profess. Not just the talking points and the rhetoric stuff, but really live it and prove it, because that's what's going to help the middle class the most, the hardworking Americans who really deserve it.
Well, and the Democrats, they're obstructionists. So no matter what they do with tax reform, they're going to hate it. They're going to claim that, it's either racist or it is going to hurt the poor, no matter what, because this is the anti-Trump movement. So no matter what his administration does, no matter what the Republicans do, they're going to complain about it.
Yeah, and Stephanie, that's such a good point. And this is where I think leadership comes in. If conservatives and Republicans really believe that their principles are the best thing for hardworking Americans and create the most opportunity, then let's have that conversation. Let's have it on the floor of the Senate and the floor of the House and in front of the American people, not in some back room in Leader McConnell's office. Let's trust and believe that these principles work and quit hiding behind closed doors and backroom deals. And let's have a real conversation, because I believe that those principles do work. We've seen them work in this country. And if the Democrats want to obstruct, make them defend that on the floor of the Senate and the House and in front of the American people. But right now, all we have is collusion from both sides getting some deal so no one has to take a hard vote and everybody gets reelected. 94% of the members of Congress were reelected last year, despite only having a 10% approval rating. I mean, that's lower than the influenza virus, and yet they were all reelected. And so we've got to force that conversation, and that takes leadership. And that's why we need new Republican leadership. So we can say, yeah, we trust our principles. We're not afraid of our principles. We're going to put them out there, and we're going to have votes. We're going to have lots of votes and have this real dialogue with the American people. To me, that's the whole ball game.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell, they need to get their acts together, because it's an embarrassment.